Yeah, thanks for joining me spontaneously on this Sunday morning in Australia, Saturday evening in Iceland, and sometimes Saturday during the day in the US.
Afternoon. Yeah.
Afternoon, very good, very good. So for everyone that is completely out of the loop, this past week was CSM Summit. That is when CCP invites the CSM members to come to Iceland for a week of workshops to talk about all the pressing issues in EVE Online and things that are in development, things that are going well, are not going so well, and we exchange ideas, talk about solutions, and that happened this past week. It finished yesterday with player presentations, and except for Casimir and me, everyone else was actually in Iceland. So I'm going to since first question, who actually got the CSM crud apparently? So I heard of a lot of people getting sick. Drake, Ariel, are you guys okay?
I probably brought some of it in because I, like, as a CSM know, I've been like really ill.
Ah,
But then I got out
Propodgen.
of the week, amongst other things. But so it wasn't long into the summit where I was dubbed typhoid fleet issue.
All right, very good. Ariel, how you doing?
Yeah, I broke down about Tuesday, so that's how I know I didn't start. But just fatigued and snotty all week, and I've sort of just come out of the other side of it. So hopefully, on the plane, I'm not going to be collapsing too much.
Well, I already said I received the crowd in spirit, so thank you. Kazan, are you okay? You feeling good?
Yeah. Since I wasn't there, yes, even my eighth graders have failed to get me sick. I caught something over the winter break from them, but things are better now.
Very,
In the
very
name
good.
of unity, we'll sort something out for you, Cass.
Right,
We'll get you a
yeah.
sniffle or something.
I'm glad that we're organizing our own super spreader events several years on. That's quite exciting.
I mean the last two fan fests I got COVID, and the last CSM summit I also came back with a cold. So I think anytime you have this workshop with a lot of people from around the world, this
Hmm.
is this is what happens. Um, so I know everyone in chat and in Discord has been asking me for a vibe check. As you all know, we can't discuss any details. They're all under an NDA, but I think a vibe check is what everyone cares about. So I'll start since Casimir and I have the advantage of having now back to back summits and can kind of compare as well. I'm going to come out and say that I thought it was overall a very positive summit. I think that we talked about all the issues that were near and dear to me, and I have a feeling also to everyone else. But you guys can answer that for yourself. I felt like we got our points across. I also felt like we were able to make some points that CCP wasn't fully aware of, which was nice. Um, and I am overall, I would say, maybe a 7 out of 10 hopeful that we're going to see some positive changes here in the near future in terms of um, the overall arching topics that were important to me, which was mostly inflation and mineral prices, which is no surprise. I've said this on the show many times. Let me see. Let me pass it off to Ariel alphabetically. Ariel, vibe check. How are you feeling after the summit?
Yeah, really positive actually. I had a lot of fun. I've heard some horror stories. I've been playing EVE a long time, and you hear about what CSM, like, I don't know, 8 and things used to be like. And I thought being locked in a room with 12 people with strong opinions would be exhausting. But overall, it's actually been like incredibly lovely, that everyone is willing to put their own sort of egos aside and have great discussions. Um, I apart from the sickness, like, I didn't feel like I came out the I'd done a day's work. You know, I just felt like I talked about a video game for 7 hours, even though CCP do whip you pretty hard. They get your money's worth out of you for flying all the way to Iceland. It really just felt like playing a video game for 7 hours.
Yeah, like totally agree. It's I always last year that week felt like it didn't feel quite like vacation, but it felt, because it was meetings about something we all care about so much. It's absolutely, it doesn't feel like work to me ever. It's really great, and I agree that it was a very, I would say we had very intense discussion, but it was very harmonious. It was even, I dare say that it was even more harmonious than it was the year before, which was already, fairly harmonious. But this time, I felt like even more fruitful discussions and more constructive discussions as well. So I really appreciated that, and everyone being there. And also, I have to say that it was a bit more, I did feel that it was more diverse. Like, we had more different opinions in the room, even more this time than we had last year. And I think that adds a ton to finding better solutions and making sure that everyone is better represented. Drake, how are you doing? How are you feeling?
Besides the illness, yeah, no, it was good. I'd say it's been quite exhausting, but simply I've been under the weather, and the days have been short because you enjoy them, but long in terms of the amount of thinking and discussion you get into. I would agree that it was very positive. I think, I don't know how it was in the previous CSMs, but we seemed to have a strategy where we would discuss the topics the night before when we were all in the hotel, restaurant, or wherever we were eating, and we all like came to an agreement, like, what is the most important topic today, for the following day, and we would just like absolutely hash out, like, reasonably brutally, like what a problem is, the biggest problem, and what consensus can we reach to say to CCP, like, you have the entire CSM the entire council saying this is agreeable as a good path forward. I think there was only one meeting where that kind of just didn't happen because we didn't have enough time to prepare beforehand, and it just kind of became a shit show, not because of arguments, but because we just strayed off topic. I think that one was probably not a productive one, but for us or for CCP, but the rest of them were extremely productive. We also had additional meetings afterwards that weren't even on the table, because we'd given good feedback to some of the dev teams, and they wanted to go more in depth or go over something they didn't get time to. So that was really cool as well.
Yeah, that's one of the great side effects of CSM Summit, is that when you have more intense workshops with the devs, a lot of times at the summit in the afternoon or in the evenings or in the weeks after the summit, they approach you because they know you have certain knowledge or certain opinions on things, and then you have follow-on discussions that are much more, that get started immediately, because you've already established a common ground at the summit. And that is a huge side effect that I think a lot of you and us are going to be benefiting from for a long time. I still have spontaneous discussions now, from last year's summit, where we started discussions at the summit, where they pulled me aside and say, hey, how about ABC? What if we do this? What if we do that? In very early phases, to then later on hash it out in the group. And I think that's very helpful, because a lot of times, like, it doesn't make sense if they approach me to ask detailed questions about Pochven when they could have early discussions with you, Drake, and then bringing decisions to the group later on.
Yeah, and I would also say, it's not just like the extra follow-up meeting and stuff. It's being able to interact with the devs, like breakfast, lunch, dinner. You get to speak to them twice, 2 days back to back. I end up speaking with Hilmar in the hotel lobby until 1:30 in the morning.
I heard about that.
The second time, The first time I got accused of sleeping with him, so I said, "Sorry, that's under NDA." Or I think Dujisk said, I can't accept or deny it or whatever." But the second time was it was like the final farewell dinner, and there was a lot of devs. There was CCP Zealous, CCP Swift, Berger. There's loads of them, and CCP Hilmar. And he was on my table, and we just like were. I've in my background as accountancy, I deal with a lot of CEOs, and I understand that they have generally no time to talk about specifics of any product because they have to. Their entire focus is the boardroom or investors or the company as a whole. And I actually massively underestimated how much he knows about Eve. And he is actually, aside from like some arcane knowledge or some meta, he's actually quite knowledgeable, which really it just surprised me, I guess. So we were talking for probably 6 hours until like 2 a.m. last night, which was pretty insane.
I'm looking
That's
forward
So
to
good to hear.
3 additional Pakvans now hearing this.
sorry, that's under NDA.
Yeah, it's definitely very dangerous leaving Drake alone with devs.
Yeah, it's not the first time I've been in a private thing with devs, and you guys haven't noticed. I will also say the one downside, the one thing that went wrong this summit was I was the first one doing my player presentation, and CSP Zealous forgot to hit record, so I need to do it again.
Oh dear.
But I inside that has a lot of NDA information on Podfin, so you and Kaz, you and Oz can go and see it. It's in the private channels, and then I'm going to redact it as best I can for public release, and then PCP is going to like redact anything else that he thinks is NDA, and then that's going to go to the public.
Yeah, I listened to it live. Always very, very interesting. The player presentations, love them. I think I still get questions on the presentation I did last year, and sometimes they pull out the slides and we talk about them. So it's really good. Drake went over. This is not under NDA. Drake went over about 20 minutes.
I did not. I was told I had an hour, and Swift only booked 45 minutes. But I was like 5 minutes over time if it was an hour, and I didn't like do my final bit or whatever.
Look, this might be one of those topics where the CSM won't ever be unanimous, but you're full of shit. You went over by like half an hour. I love you.
Then
It's all right.
there is something that isn't covered under NDA. We can speak about what we told CCP, but we can't say what CCP replied with. So Jita in your chat said about the colorblind thing. I spoke with probably won't be able to say which devs, but like quite in depth on colorblind and hard of hearing things, and they were like writing a lot of notes, and I showed them like some design documents for inspiration from other games. So the same thing with all CSM summits. It's a matter of everyone's positive, but it's a case of when is it going to get in? We don't know if it gets in at all. I'm hoping it's going to be reasonably soon, but game dev is a beast of its own.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year, some of the things that I pitched during my presentation last year, like the multi-buy order or multiple buying of sell orders at the sell price, it took a year to be implemented, and then they implemented it wrong, and hopefully at some point we're gonna get a fix, which I'm still gonna celebrate if we see it one day. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things that we did mention. You're right, the colorblind thing, Drake. That's a great point, and it's very important to a very small but nevertheless very important group of people. We have we talked about the whole research cost issue that's been in the game for a few years and the impacts of that. And again, we can't say what CCP said, but a lot of these issues that have been plaguing the player base for the last year, we discussed, and we discussed at length. And so that's to me the fact that CCP listened a lot and also learned a few things. I think here and there is very, very positive. Kaz, how are you feeling about the summit?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to feel good, right? We're in the honeymoon period.
Yeah.
I was especially appreciative and impressed, honestly, by all of the new people on the CSM. Like the others observed, we had a high degree of rapport. It's interesting because the members of the CSM who are outright hostile to each other in game, we've now been on for 3 years. At the end of this term, Storm Delay, Luke Annan, and I are all going to rotate. And Ken, who has returned, was also there for CSM 17. But I think of the 3 summits, this is the best one that I have had, and our relationship with CCP is greatly improved. So that's positive. And like I say, I was impressed by all the new guys coming into that and being able to adapt quickly. I thought it was substantially better than last year for a variety of reasons. And some of that is personal rapport, and other pieces of it, like you mentioned, Oz, or the diversity of opinion, which is not necessarily a knock on some of the members of CSM 18, but really a credit to the having brought in people from high PvP backgrounds, but other areas of space that are not nullsec, I feel like, in various ways. So pretty happy with that. CCP is in a sort of difficult position where, compared to 3 years ago, and the terms have been extended a little bit, so it's really only something like 28 months or 30 months ago, basically 2.5 years, when CSM 17 was elected. Now the game was just in a deeply crappy state. Numerically, there were not a ton of people logging in 2022. Everyone, CSM 17 was elected, we were all gravely concerned. And it's not like that now. The numbers look much better, but nevertheless, CCP has a bit of a PR problem with 2 back-to-back expansions that have had significant issues with how they were received by the player base. I think legitimately, Nullsec was not happy with the sort of disparity between how Equinox was billed and what ended up happening. There's a whole preview video that shows a set of SovHub upgrades that did not materialize. I think that was a mistake that set the ground for a negative reaction. And similarly with Revenant, there were a bunch of issues right at launch. So I think that both contributed to CCP continuing to be receptive, but also it's a tricky sort of field of problems to solve. So the jury continues to be out. We have to wait and see what they do, which is, I totally appreciate where the players want to see it in action. But yeah, the summit went very well. I think basically everyone got to say their piece on various topics, and yeah, the degree of rapport and working together on the council is, I think, probably as good as it's ever been. And I've been around long enough, right? I was in power in my first Eve career back in 2010 and 2011 when the first nullsec CSM started getting elected, CSM 6, CSM 7, and talked to people like Matani and Vile Rat and those guys quite a lot at the time, and did not regard it as functional as I have experienced. Even back then, when they had specific stuff that they were pushing. This is the time period that leads up to the Summer of Rage and all of this, right? So yeah, I'm pretty happy. I hope that can continue. As like I said, Storm and Luke and I all rotate. We'll have to see how things go next year. But things seem, we have at least some of the elements for success, and I think for CCP to come out with a pair of expansions this year that make an impact on the player base's opinion too.
I'd like to
Yeah.
echo the rapport thing, especially on the side of like the nullsecers, because there is this narrative kind of on Reddit and the forums and stuff that it's like a metagame thing where one nullsec block has to elect their stuff to stop the other nullsec blocks putting stuff in for advantage. Based on my experiences, and now that we're under NDA, we can access old videos of older CSM meetings. And as someone who did kind of buy into that narrative a little bit previously, I can categorically say that it's horseshit. And the suggestions have straight up either there's consensus on it anyway, or if someone has a differing opinion, it's not like, well, you're wrong, I'm going to push it forward anyway. It's a responsible, like, adult discussion, and they'll either come to a consensus or they'll say, like, okay, well, let's move on to something else. It's not like a screaming match for at CCP.
Yeah, fully agree. And it hasn't been like that in the last 2 CSMs that I've been a part of. I always felt like there was no one arguing any points in favor of their alliance, whether, or their group of people. It was always genuine concern about the well-being of the game. And while we might not agree on the best solution going forward on everything, I've always felt like people were arguing from a point of wanting to make the game better. And that is, yeah, I hate that narrative on Reddit and such, but it's it's probably, as it's always like with these things, I'm sure there were previous CSMs where it wasn't like that we weren't part of, and where this was an issue, but it hasn't been recently. Another narrative on Reddit has been, how terrible Equinox is. If you go on Reddit, you feel like Equinox is an absolutely terrible expansion, and I think we spent a lot of time discussing why that is, and which parts of it are absolutely true and which parts are possibly a little bit overstated. I think one very good discussion we had, and again without breaking NDA and without saying what CCP responded, is the whole, well, what is still a remnant of scarcity and what is really Equinox? Because I think that distinction was very, very important for CCP to hear, and to discuss and to understand from us, because from that it's like understanding what's really wrong, what is really the part that is irking the community most about mining and about mineral prices and about prices overall and about tedious activities and maybe complexity for the sake of complexity and those sorts of things. I thought those discussions were really good. But Ariel, as possibly the only real miner, maybe Ken, I don't know how much mining Ken does, but how did you feel about the mining discussions? And I'm trying not to put you in a spot where you need to break NDA, but give me some general feelings about mining.
Yeah, it is actually hilarious to me that I am probably the only miner on the CSM. And we're talking like $20 or like don't bother. But I think what's really kind of interesting to say is that there's a lot of like really big major pain points with Equinox and scarcity. And I don't think I walked away from the summit feeling like we didn't talk about any of them. Whether they'll be addressed or whether the CCP respond to them, I don't know. But yeah, we definitely were able to raise the points and discuss them in a productive manner. There was nothing that that I walked away and went, oh, boo! I really wish we'd managed to talk about that, or this is still a really big issue and we didn't manage to discuss it. It was, yeah, we were able to at least talk about it.
Yeah, and I do feel like there was we made progress. Like let's put it that way. I do feel like the discussions had an outcome where I feel like, yeah, I think this is a good place for where we are ready to see some changes going forward, because the issue has been understood better than before. So that's one of the big outcomes for me from the summit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had, and this is not just the summit, but sort of evolved in the aftermath of Revenant's release. But a point I got to make to them that I think has landed, at least to some degree, is that frequently the player base ends up feeling like CCP is very unwilling to offer buffs or will talk themselves out of it based on their projection of how things are going to go, but does not have the same attitude about really sometimes crashing nerfs. Yeah, and we'll say, well, we want to see once they'll go live with the nerf, and then say, well, we want to see how this plays out before going and fixing things, and that ends up with this sort of a negative experience for the players because it feels like almost unidirectional. And I think that actually got through, or at least we've seen some evidence of it getting through with how they responded to Revenant, is that they went with a couple of significant buffs and are waiting to see how those have played out rather than talking themselves out of it, right? And I hope that that is something that continues sometimes, and I think that that's healthier than just relying on internal numbers and projections. It's okay if you have to make big changes or feel like you do to see how those play out, as long as it's not always the nerf that goes that way, right? And I think we're seeing some of that play out in the wake of Revenant, and I think that that has been a bit of an attitude adjustment. And I connect that somewhat to the scarcity era, right? They made a lot of changes because the game had gotten into a sort of degenerate state in certain ways. But it led to this attitude of being unwilling in some respects to go with stuff that players will really love out of a sort of trepidation about that reoccurring, and that has taken time to heal, as it were. But I think that's an ongoing process, and we're seeing some improvement there, so I was pretty happy.
Sometimes when I read about things like scarcity on Reddit, is I think what helped it for me to put this into perspective is like, imagine, for CCP devs, this is their job, right? This is not a game. It might also be a game that they play, hopefully, some of them, most of them, yeah, but it's a job. And a lot of them started their job during or post scarcity. So imagine your boss gives you a job and says, look, this is a terrible thing that happened in this company 3 or 4 years ago. Make sure it doesn't happen again, right? And then the slider is moved all the way to that side, to the side of caution, because that's what CCP has been the past few years. And you've been you can see that from past interviews that I have done and others have done, is CCP is just incredibly careful about not reliving that Oracle area because they're very scared of it. And our job right now is to push them more and more into the direction of, hey, no, it's okay. We're still way over here. This will never happen again because 1, 2, 3. But if your job depends on it, you just think about it differently than when it's a game, because the player base just goes, well, why don't you just put the slider all the way over there? And some people are sitting there and they're like, no, I might, if this happens, I might lose my job, like, or I might be, I might not get my bonus, or however they work. And if you think about it that way, then it's much easier to understand that these people are just very, very, very careful about what they're doing. And that's not that I'm not making an excuse for them not to understand the problem or not to work on a solution that needs to move that slider. There's no way, because otherwise we might not even have a game and none of them might have a job. But that's our job as CSM, is to push them into that direction. And I have a feeling we're doing that.
Yeah, I think we've done quite well about this week. I also like the allegory that you saying scarcity has saddled all new devs with original sin. In effect,
Yeah,
it does make sense though, because it was such a big issue. But our job really is to convince them not that they shouldn't do it. It's not that it won't happen again. It's that if it does happen, change it before it gets into the monolithic problem that it became, because it was left far too long. And so
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing they need to take away. And I hope they have.
I hope they have to. Just I don't think making rocks a little bit bigger or respawn times quicker or whatever any of the solutions might be, what's never going to happen in the next 1 or 2 years is that we're going to have the type of Oracle proliferation that we had 5 years ago. That is just, in the current economic environment of EVE, we are so far from that is just never going to happen. Ariel, your big thing is third party development, and if you like, this might be a very very difficult to answer. So if you don't want to answer, just say you can't. But I know people out there are wondering. That's what you're on there for. What's your feeling on third party dev?
Yeah, I got to be really careful.
Yeah.
NDA is a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
I would look at the CSM a topic notes that were posted on the Eve forum.
Mhm.
And there was an ESI topic that we discussed, and
Just be careful. I know what
there
you're
was
thinking about.
No, I totally.
there was an ESI topic that was discussed, and I certainly I don't feel negative about the summit. I think we were able to have discussions. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
just
I think it's legitimate to say that this is a big topic, and the proof will have to be in the pudding to a certain extent. Just like with everything, I don't want to come on your show, Oz, and be telling the player base, "Oh yeah, everything is peachy." But I do not feel like. Often there's an allegation from the player base that CCP is trying to get rid of API access, either over time, right? That they don't want to support that type of thing anymore for a variety of reasons, and I don't think that's true. It's just an actually very challenging thing to try to expose the right parts of your data in the right way to application developers for a variety of reasons. And not all of those are even gameplay related. Some of them are technical. And that is a challenge which they have not been great at the last few years, but I don't think that they are trying to change that approach. I still think that they are committed to that to a degree. Their commitment could have been higher, certainly. But I don't think I have often heard from the players that it feels like they just want to do away with that and have everything come through the game, and that is not true. Like I said, they have to put the proof in the pudding and show a lot more success there. But I have not walked away from my CXM experience being concerned that narrative is accurate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I agree totally. Drake, what was your favorite meeting in the week?
The which let me just check which ones were words omitted, because I know some were omitted.
Or anyone who wants to answer the question, I'll ask all of you. I always like the team security ones.
Yeah, okay.
Ariel.
So team security is redacted, so we can't talk about it at all. But that one was amazing, like absolutely amazing. I absolutely cannot go any further than that. I would say the UI UX opportunities one, which is definitely where I brought up a lot of the hard of hearing and color blindness things. That one was extremely positive. And the tax and managing the economy, Oz and I we were cooking on that one. They just kind of like let us take it away, didn't they?
Yep, I feel good about that.
And actually the little things one was extremely productive.
It's funny because, like, if this was my first summit, then I would also be very on fire about the little things. But since my little things from last year took about 15 months to be implemented, which is still great, but I feel a little bit less encouraged about that. I think we did all we could on the little things meeting, but there I am squarely in the camp of, well, let's see what happens. Ariel, what was your favorite meeting?
This is a absolutely loaded topic. But it was actually a force projection meeting, and it was only because we all came together and we hashed a lot of topics that we wanted to discuss out in the hotel lobby, and I won't say any particular person because I think the CSM is a team effort. But we were able to enter that meeting and go, okay, CSM one, you need like we want to discuss this, and they ran themselves through that topic, and everyone sort of did their like thumbs up, like we agree, like we support this. CSM2, like explain the take on this topic. It was really succinct. You know, everyone maybe had a little interjection or something. Boom, CSM3, you know, place your opinion on this topic. You know, CCP, what are your thoughts here? Like topic 4, let's go. And I think we knocked through an hour and a half topic in like 45 minutes, super succinctly, summarized everything up. It was amazing. You know, we almost left for lunch early. Turns out that like CCP had some more questions for us, and we were able to iterate on and expand upon those points further. But I can't believe the topic I was dreading the most, and I thought would be the most contentious, was the most productive of the whole summit.
Yeah, the same. I can't. I obviously won't name the dev and what he or she does, but I've never seen them speechless before in how uncontentious the CSM were on this topic. We basically, like at the start of it, we just said like, we know you have you have topics, but here is our list of topics, and we have absolutely hashed this out to the team. They're like, okay, take it away.
Casimir, CSM 18 projection versus CSM 19 projection.
Yeah, I mean, it was dramatically different for a variety of reasons. It's hard to pin it down exactly, but 18 did not walk in with a consensus. That much is accurate. Whereas our discussions, I think, were a lot more productive and more focused in a variety of ways this time. So again, we'll have to see how things go. But yeah, it was good. I appreciated everyone's ability to talk about those things. Let's see, favorite meeting. It's really hard to decide. I thought everything was honestly good, and there were a couple meetings I missed. I ended up having sleep schedule collapse by midday on Thursday, so I missed a couple of them. But I enjoyed everything. I thought in particular the meetings about econ were pretty good. I even liked the Equinox meeting. So there's just a wide field. I thought we just got through a ton of stuff, which is probably the most positive part. Could easily have used another week, you know, but that'll
It's
have to
always
play
like
out
that.
across the rest of the year, you know. But at least there are reasons to be encouraged. We'll see how things go.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought honestly, I don't even know. Did they publish the topics? I haven't looked at the public topics.
The topics are.
So the names that I'm seeing on Slack, I can talk about.
I'll DM you guys.
Let's see here.
It's on the e-forums.
I have it up on the stream now. The list of topic here. Yeah, there we go. This is the official post that CCP Zealous put out, or Swift, one of the two.
Yeah, I thought I only got to make half of it even, but I thought that the capital balance discussion was also excellent for the portions that I heard. You know, it at least got to sort of the heart of how these things operate and the role they're supposed to fill in the ecosystem. I still have to go back and listen to the second half of that meeting, but I was encouraged by how it started in a way that I have not always been. So that was good.
Yeah, absolutely. So chat, if you want to post questions to us, I would wrap it up with that. So let us know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to pass them on to the CSM. I'm sure they're lurking in chat. Ariel, sorry you can't. Here, see, Ariel, I'm gonna make you VIP, Ariel, so you can post links. But I'm pretty sure you were just trying to.
Yeah, I
post
just got shadow banned.
Yeah.
Shadow muted. I also realized I used the word consensus, which is probably not the right word to use, and that's only just because I'm like thinking about it out loud. But I think we're all like respectful of each other's points, and we're able to get through stuff so much quicker because of that, and even present the like possible issues that other CSM members have raised with a topic like super fast. So it wasn't necessarily that we all 12 of us said like this is a great idea. like all 12 of us said, this is the best idea, and here are some like things to be aware of. I think, yeah, I just wanted to, I use consensus, and that's like a very strong word when you're
Yeah.
talking about like 12 individual people.
Yeah,
You know,
it's we all came to the paradigm of perfect is the enemy of good. Everyone seeking their own perfect solution will never get anything done. But one good solution that we all agree that may have some downsides here and there, as long as CCP is aware of it. It's something that all areas of space, or at least all areas of space that the CSM is representing, um, can agree. It's definitely an improvement of what we have now.
You know, it's funny when Ariel, if you talk about consensus, the first day of the summit was the first time that we all, saw each other in a more intense meeting. Like the previous CSM weekly meetings were more, loose and not so tough in discussion. And I noticed on day one that even the people that were quiet before, that I didn't know how strong their opinion was, or whether they, whether they were going to push it hard, everyone started speaking up. And on day one I thought, oh, okay, so we're all opinionated, which isn't always the case. I think some people are quieter than others, or some people take a step back. And I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting, because when everyone is actually trying to grab attention, trying to make their point, etc., it can be very tricky. And then it turned out to be even better than last year, which was even more amazing. Let me grab some questions from chat here. And I mean, the first one is very difficult to answer without breaking NDA, but do any of you feel like the price of capital ships will come down anytime soon? I'll start, okay? So clearly this has to do a lot with either structural changes in capital construction or raw material prices coming down, right? So I can't talk about any specific solutions that I think may or may not coming. So I'm just going to quote myself from the last few weeks. It is clear that we have multiple bottlenecks in minerals right now. It is clear that mining is not in a good space right now, and that's an understatement. So do I think in the long run capital prices will come down? Absolutely, because they have to be, and they should, and because that's what I'm always going to fight for. And I haven't heard, I think, anyone on the CSM arguing something different. So I think we all feel like they should come down. I think if CCP listen to us, then they will come down. Does anyone else have something to add?
There's like two like NDA adjacent questions. So like Arjun said, did you guys discuss mineral changes for capitals in meetings? I will just say we discussed minerals because that's the topic. I'm not gonna go into detail on what CCP brought to us because that will absolutely be covered by NDA. But Lava Kano's one saying, did CCP ever consider $15 a month? I personally brought that up to CCP. I can't tell you what their reply was or what their reaction was, but I specifically brought up, like, currently you've got it as $20, which is a massive barrier to entry for new players, and then you're constantly doing sales, which essentially you are in effect doing the $15 a month, but it doesn't affect new players, which are the people we need to bring into the game. So I personally think they're really shooting themselves in the foot there.
We did
So
bring up that dichotomy for sure. I think
yeah,
capital prices, how things play out is not clear to me. I I think there's an argument that more of what we're seeing is about the bottleneck issue than prices.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily think the current pricing is good, but at the same time, ISK income has increased dramatically since scarcity and even since pre-scarcity in some ways, and we're seeing that play out in the economy in ways that are not healthy. I think in part because of the bottleneck issue. I think at least something close to the current prices would be more sustainable if they were more stable, or somewhat less than they are but stable, and the ISK could flow correctly into that sector of the economy. so that it was not the way it currently is, where as soon as the ISK starts to flow there, the prices just keep going up.
Yeah.
What is supposed to happen is that all of that excess ISK is supposed to go into capital and eventually super capital construction and destruction in a way that keeps the cycle going. And due to really, it's the change there is not about price, it's about the bottlenecking and the difficulty of construction. I spent a long time while I was fun employed building a ton of capitals, built probably half a dozen Titans, maybe a few more. This is now over a year ago. And it was exhausting, such that I really burned out on the game midway through CSM 18 doing that. And then, of course, I had to go find a new job at some point. And so there's all these other real life issues. But I don't feel like it's solely about price, given the amount of ISK in the economy. I think what you see with Plex continuing to rise is that whole cycle continues to be broken. Whereas I think there's a possibility that it could be not broken, even if the price point were similar, or maybe only, say it were reduced by only 15 or 20 or 25%. I don't know what number. That you'd see dramatically more usage, dramatically more destruction. And you do see usage of capitals right now, even at the current price point, where supers are not used in the same way almost ever as they were, when that is where the biggest destruction happens, relative especially to insurance value. So there are all these interacting pieces. I don't, in my mind, I don't have a metric for success of prices go back to where they were during the Rorqual era, or even before that, right? When I was growing up, so to speak, in Eve, Titans were anywhere from 90 to 120 billion ISK. Maybe we never go back there, given what ISK prices are like. But I do think that if the bottlenecks were removed or altered in some way so that it's not a true bottleneck, but there's more of a basket effect, and that if that stuff was economically unblocked in terms of acquisition of the resources, and we had a whole meeting just about resources acquisition, that you would see that cycle come into play and the ISK would flow there rather than just continually feeding into the Plex price because there's almost nothing else to do with it. So I think the price question it's connected, but it's not solely about price. I think it would be better if there were a broader range of spots for capital and super capital prices to land at, all of which are lower than they are now. But like I said, maybe not even to the pre-Rorqual era of 120 billion as Titan. I don't know if we ever see that again, given all the other changes that have taken place and where ISK income is like now.
Yeah, I think it's always a function of availability and inflation. So I don't think just because of inflation we're not going to go back to that pricing, but in terms of purchasing power of Titans, we need to move more in that direction. I agree, Casimir.
There's also the issue of like Titans just aren't worth using at the moment outside of being a jump bridge for subplex.
Right, yeah, it's also a balancing issue, absolutely, and that's yes.
Let's see. I'm going to filter out some questions here. Did the CSM speak to CCP about HiSec specifically in the realm of war decks and how they work? We didn't have a meeting on it at the summit. I think I can say that, right?
I do believe one CSM member has brought up specific interactions for CDP. It wasn't during a meeting, but it was brought up that week. So I don't know the specifics of that because I was involved, but I do know.
Definitely Empire space comes up, not solely HiSec, but some pieces of how HiSec work, how it interacts with stuff like faction war and the pirate mechanics, especially when stuff is being abused. That does get a mention, or at least several things did, but beyond that, I don't remember exactly the specifics. And war decks, I don't know specifically either. So, but we're not totally ignoring Empire space, that's for sure.
Yeah, I see Ariel. Thanks for Ariel is answering in chat. Perfect. Yeah. Futility asking, would CCP ever consider reducing the sheer number of inputs needed for construction? I mean, the complexity, the overall complexity of industry and specifically capital construction was brought up during the summit, and we had a discussion on it.
And they at least partially reduced the complexity back in Equinox,
Mhm.
for those who recall, which I was encouraged by, even though it didn't go all the way. So before doing all that building, I had written a sort of roadmap of what I thought should happen to make it such that some of the subcomponents would be things that people could specialize in. And pieces of that seem like they got done, although the path was winding. So I at least I think they are open to that. Just based on Equinox, not anything in particular I heard at the summit. How that plays out, I don't know. But the acquisition issue turns out to be material acquisition turns out to be such a larger issue that I think most of the capital producers I talk to tell me, well, it's just so hard to get the stuff on top of the complexity that the whole thing is exhausting, and it needs to not be exhausting is the big thing.
Yeah. Aleventi's question, that last one, is something that maybe it's referring to something that I posted on Reddit, because I feel like people always expect change now, and most people underestimate how long it takes to convince someone that a change is necessary for them to then prioritize it in their roadmap and then implement it. Because sometimes some things feel like it's a number in a database, and sometimes it might even be, but those decisions just take such a long time getting consensus, getting it on the roadmap. And so the question is, what are your feelings about CCP's desire to fix broken things versus adding new things? Because that's the other complexity of it. Like, even if you wanted to change things, CCP also has new stuff lined up for each expansion. So fixing old things, while I think we as a CSM have been very much adamant about fix broken things before you add new things, especially for a 20-year-old game. Like, I think, I mean, throwing it out there, but I think 9 out of 10 EVE players would want broken things fixed first before adding new things. And I know new things are nice for marketing and everything, but it's not going to keep your existing player base happy. So the question is, yes, how are we feeling about CCP adding fix broken things versus adding new things? And I would love it to be 50-50, but I think probably overall the way CCP works, it's more like 30-70 fixing things versus adding new things.
Probably quite a hard one to answer, because how many little things is worth one big feature?
Yeah, it's impossible to answer completely, of course.
I think we sort of have underrated this to an extent. Post-Revenant especially, we saw a ton of fixes like this, as a matter of fact, and some portions of the player base have recognized that. I've gotten commentary from a few people that I talk to, or see talk in channels, that have noted that. And I think this is something that the player base can come through for us and for CCP in terms of positive feedback. If it is in fact 90-10, and I believe that that is honestly true, they really need to hear overwhelming positivity when they do that. I think that would be very helpful in convincing them. Like I mentioned earlier, they have a couple of expansions that weren't all that well received, and some of that was almost not unavoidable, but Equinox in particular, there needed to be a wholesale new set of stuff added to nullsec, because to accomplish some very important goals, nullsec essentially needed a whole new map added, because otherwise you just have TrueSec to work with, and that would have not been good for them to do. So there was a need for a whole new set of systems, and that sucked a lot of air out of the room and caused a lot of backlash when the numbers weren't right, which continues to this day. But let's just hypothetically imagine to ourselves, purely hypothetically, let's imagine that they come out with a pair of expansions this year, and I'm not saying this will happen. Hypothetically, though, if these expansions are filled with a huge number of fixes to old content, it would be incredibly beneficial to have the player response acknowledge that, rather than immediately reaching for the player base's usual level of toxicity. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
That would seeing that acknowledgement would be super beneficial for CCP, and I think be clarifying in various ways. Yeah, and especially I do not want to see people say if that does happen. Again, I'm not saying it will, but if that were to happen, I would especially be annoyed if we had people saying, "Well, there isn't anything in this expansion pack. It's all blah 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 blah." Right? I the number of shinies in the expansion is not that relevant, and if I see complaints about that, I'll be pissed. That's my
It's
take.
just something you can't win on. If they bring in something and don't do any fixes, people like get really mad at the no fixes. And if there's only fixes and no content, then like, well, this wasn't an expansion at all.
I
Just
mean,
you
yes,
just can't win with this player base sometimes. It's
Two,
not the player base; it's just parts of it.
it is. It's just parts, but that is exactly what I would like to address. I think now is they have a big opportunity here to try exactly that, and we have certainly pushed for that approach at numerous times, right? Not just this year. But I would like the player base to to acknowledge that if in fact it does come to pass, um, rather than for example, and again, I'm not saying this will happen, but hypothetically, think of an example where there's an expansion that doesn't have any new ships, right? Every expansion they have had recently has had new ships, but if there were one that addresses a whole laundry list and does not have any, I would be thrilled, right? To see
Yeah.
that, but I can imagine the player base sort of freaking out and going, "What's going on?" And I don't want that to happen. For example, I think that's a very unlikely example, which is why I picked it as a hypothetical. But I think it's a good one to sort of keep in our minds.
I think the problem is that they have now locked themselves into CCP has locked themselves into the 2 expansions, and they're calling them expansions because sometimes you just gotta call them patches, and then it's okay. Like at this point, a patch with a lot of fixes in June would make me happier than a quote unquote expansion that feels light. All right, we're gonna end up with the last question. I have never heard this expression before, but Kyokios asked, "Was anyone close to throwing hands in the meeting? Is throwing hands getting into a fight?"
Correct.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
what that means. Yes.
There wasn't a single fight. There was during like one meeting, there was like a very long back and forth argument, but it was only like it wasn't shouting. It was just like they couldn't understand each other's position.
Yeah, I know exactly which situation you were talking about, and on being on the virtual end of things, I couldn't tell whether it was joking or not. So it felt a little awkward from the outside, but no
I
throwing
don't
hands.
remember this at all. You guys will have to brief them.
You weren't in this meeting. Actually, you were, but you
Ah.
left.
Oh,
Like
okay. That
It was getting later in the evening, and I think it was on the day when a few people were starting to get sick. And it didn't go bad by any means. I would absolutely not say there was a breakdown. But if you left something like that unchecked for 20 minutes and people just kept getting louder and kept not understanding the other person, these things can spiral out of control and like ruin relationships and stuff. And I think without saying anyone from CCP in particular, they've got a lot of experience dealing with the CSM. And I think we were in the best position with the people in that room to like sort of tap it on the head and realize what was going on there and
Mhm.
move on super fast. Like the moment everyone realized that it was sort of getting heated, we all shut up and went, okay, next topic, and just flat out moved on. We'll discuss it in a week or 2 weeks when we've all calmed down.
Yeah, yeah. Futility is asking whether we talked to Hilmar. Hilmar attended a few meetings, which is great.
He attended a lot of meetings actually.
Yeah, yeah.
he did. Yeah.
So was good. More than last year, I think. I saw more of Hilmar this year than last year, right?
Was
Kaz?
he? I don't think he actually managed to attend in person last year, right? I don't
No, we were
remember.
just there. Like he was virtually there a few times. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No,
But
very
yeah,
good.
we saw a fair amount of him TBH.
It
That
did
I
also
don't think
help.
that means we talked to him extensively. It's not like he was piping up all the time, but he was around.
Yeah. It did help us a little bit that we had a red storm warning here for Saturday, so Hilmar's flight, well, Friday and Saturday, so Hilmar's flight back to wherever he was going was cancelled. So he stayed a bit longer, and that's why like I spent so much time with him.
Nice.
But he was very like early on in the week. He was in 2 meetings first day, 1 meeting second day. I don't think I saw him Wednesday. I did see him in the hotel lobby, and then he was definitely in at least 2 more meetings. So
Okay. Cool. Any last words that you guys want to get out?
the last question, someone Arjun asked, "Who is the funniest among the CSM?" Like, bro, do you even have to ask? It's me. And the funniest in the CCP staff is clearly CCP Jotun, because he's like the teddy bear that can also like crush you underfoot if he doesn't notice you because he's so fucking huge. He's very funny.
Yeah, I agree, and no
I would
comment.
say
Ariel.
it is young Pucus the second. We had hours of fun with his name. He didn't even need to be there as a human being. He could have just left a plaque with his name on it, and we would have had a ball of a time. But he is also a lovely human being and is willing to run with it. It was super fun.
Yeah, last year we had alcoholic Satan in these work
Yeah.
meetings, and now we had young Puke in these work meetings, which makes it interesting. Name change, anyone? Okay, cool, awesome. Thanks so much for stopping by, guys. I know it's weird times and always spontaneous. Would love to have you back anytime. So anytime you want to discuss anything with the community or have an idea for a show, let me know. It's been amazing spending the week with you guys, and I hope everyone feels better very, very quickly.
Certainly. Hey, thanks for having us on again.
Sure. Perfect.
Thanks,
All right,
man.
we're gonna take yeah, Ariel.
I was just gonna complain about my 32-hour flight, so I'm gonna get like a 5-hour nap. Let's go.
Ariel is going to
Ariel
come back
excited.
to where I am. Yeah. Are you stopping by? Ariel?
I could actually. I'll send you my flight details.
Oh, do it. Maybe we could have some coffee. Cool. Awesome. We're gonna take a quick break on the stream. I'm gonna get a coffee and stuff, and I will be back in 5 minutes, and then we'll talk about the markets. Thank you guys. Bye bye.